Welcome back to our retirement video education series. This is one of a number of videos and podcasts that we're doing for the pilots. I'm Captain Pat May, the Negotiating Committee Chairman. With me today is Captain Ben Douglas, the R&I Committee Chairman, and the Vice Chairman of the R&I Committee, Captain Kevin Biggins. Welcome, guys.
Good to be here.
So today's video is going to focus on general retirement plan risks. In those risks, there's four broad categories: investment risk, longevity risk, inflationary risks, and bankruptcy risks. Those broad categories apply to any retirement plan. What I'd like to do is a dive down or a deeper dive in each of those areas. We could probably start off with the inflationary risk. Ben, you want to start there?
Sure, Pat. So inflation risk, which is also known as purchasing power risk, is the erosion of the dollar over time. So not to get too deep into time value of money, but a dollar today is worth more today than it is tomorrow. So if we look at it with respect to a new hire, say in his early or mid-30s, has a 30-plus year career and then a retired life expectancy of approximately 30 years, and then possibly having a beneficiary associated with that benefit, you're talking about almost 60 years of purchasing power erosion. So what that means is, in today's dollars, if you had $130,000, it's going to be much less as you enter retirement and as you go through your retired life expectancy.
Talk a little bit about longevity risk, and how that may impact the defined benefit and the defined contribution plan. Kevin?
Yeah, sure, Pat. So longevity risk is just the possibility a participant will live longer than their projected life expectancy or actuarial charts say they will live. And it affects the DB plan in that it can increase the funding liability of that plan. And on the DC side, it can increase the chance that a participant will outlive their money, their benefit that they have accumulated in their DC plan. The risk associated for the DB on that side is taken up by the plan sponsor. So one of the key features of a defined benefit plan is that the payments, the standard benefit, is annuitized. So it is paid out to the participant throughout their lifetime, which simply means you cannot outlive your money. The same cannot be said for DC plans. In these plans, it is up to the participant to adequately fund and properly manage their own individual retirement account, so those funds are available to them throughout their retirement years.
Yeah, so there's a clear risk that a pilot, right, if they don't manage that or invest it properly, that they may outlive the total accumulated benefit in the defined contribution plan. And I think what's important here as well to note is that who is better able to withstand or deal with that longevity risk, minimize longevity risk. And clearly, the employer is much better suited to minimize the longevity risk because they get to pool all the applicants inside that trust. Whereas on the defined contribution side, it's the individual pilot who's trying to manage that longevity risk, and it's anybody's best guess, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So if you summed it up, Pat, the bottom line is, with respect to the defined benefit plan, you'll never outlive that benefit. Where in a defined contribution plan, as you noted, if you don't carefully develop, implement, and monitor the plan, you certainly could outlive your money.
Ben, and so we're talking about longevity risk, and a common thing you hear that comes up with pilots as well, what about our mortality? Nobody lives beyond 2 years after they retire. Any words, wisdom there with that?
I think we're a tight-knit group, and I think that when we hear of one of our fellow colleagues passing, that it affects us very dearly because we are so close. However, there's no studies or surveys that suggest that we live any shorter than the IRS actuary tables. And so there have been a study that was done years ago that had a very small sample size and didn't really speak to a true picture with respect to pilots and early mortality deaths.
Yeah, that's right. I think the study was only about 280 pilots out of all the pilots right in the world. So statistically insignificant, but it's a good point. And I think the practical matter is our actual experience that's been known and quantified in the defined benefit plan. We know that doesn't hold true for the FedEx pilots as well.
Correct.
So, okay. So Kevin, let's turn a little bit to the investment risk, both on the DB and the DC side. Can you explain a little bit what the investment risk looks like and how it impacts both the defined benefit and the defined contribution plan?
Yeah, sure, Pat. On the defined benefit side, the company or the plan sponsor, they hold all the investment risk. So they have the benefit in an up market or good economy of not having to contribute as much into the plan. And then conversely, it works the opposite in a down economy. They might have to contribute more, especially if there's a negative disparity between assets and liabilities. This could require more contributions than they were planning on making for that particular year. Ultimately, that can lead to an unpredictable funding of that retirement plan from the company perspective. And in extreme cases, it could lead to a distressed termination of that plan. It's a little simpler on the defined contribution side of things, and that is entirely up to the participant to manage their money, and they have the upside of getting greater returns and taking advantage of compounding interest, offset by the chance they could actually lose money in their plan.
The takeaway is, if you're a long-term investor in the defined contribution plan, your risk goes down over time. Inflation, as we just talked about a little while ago, is insidious and it's real, and it's probably the riskiest of all risk, regardless if you're talking about a defined benefit plan or a defined contribution plan, because that purchasing power erosion that we just spoke to earlier is important and part and parcel with investment risk. And so you have to be very careful to make sure, again, that you are monitoring the plan and that you're adequately allocated for your risk tolerance, and making sure that you don't find yourself in a shortfall.
You know, the last risk that we're going to discuss today, I think, is more catastrophic, right, when we talk about this. And we've seen it in pilots that our FedEx pilots today may have come from carriers that dealt with this, and it's bankruptcy risk. You guys care to discuss what bankruptcy risk is and how it could impact the defined benefit and even the defined contribution to some degree?
Sure, Pat. So with respect to the defined benefit plan, that bankruptcy risk runs the possibility of the company either terminating or freezing our plan. There's also situations to where, if the defined benefit is such where the company, it would put the company in a bankruptcy situation, they could also possibly terminate or freeze the plan as well. So not to sound the alarms, it's certainly one of those things that that we want to be mindful of or aware of. But and the company has been good stewards of funding the plan, and obviously we're living in unusual times. But the big takeaway would be that obviously the benefit would stop accruing, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's important to sort of go a little deeper into what would happen in that scenario, however unlikely it is to happen at FedEx. And in that case, that our DB plan was terminated, any future benefit accruals would stop. The Pension Benefit Guaranteed Corporation, they would come in and they would guarantee a certain level of benefit, and they also would guarantee benefits above the minimum guarantee if those plan assets are existing in the plan itself. So what does that look like from a participant standard? It depends in our plan on the pilot's age at the time of bankruptcy. And in our plan, those pilots who are 58 years and older, they have a higher claim to plan assets than those who are 57 and younger.
So with respect to DC plans, the only thing that would be jeopardized are the employer contributions. And so you're vested immediately in the defined contribution plan. So in the event of bankruptcy, that money is yours. As far as risk goes with respect to bankruptcy, the greatest risk would be the employer non-elective contributions.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the information. You know, these are broad categories of risk. There are other risks associated with retirement benefit plans. The key here and our takeaway ultimately is, as we move into contract preparations for 2021, when our subject matter experts get together to design and improve the current plans that we have in place, we always keep an eye towards making these improvements and minimizing the risks. And currently today, our defined benefit and defined contribution plan really offset some of these risks substantially for us. So we're going to keep that in mind as we go and work towards improving our contracting, make sure that we don't disregard some of the risk and put too much risk in one bucket. You know, we can look at other airlines out there as examples that are trying to deal with that today, that are under Section 6 negotiations, where potentially, you know, you may only have a defined contribution plan. Fortunately, that's not our case, and we'd like to keep it that way. So that's all I have today, guys. I appreciate you coming in, appreciate the information. If pilots have any more questions or comments for us, they can go to fdx.alpa.org, select the PDR link, and then they can either select the drop-down for the R&I committee or the negotiating committee and submit your questions. Thanks. Appreciate you joining us. Look forward to some more videos and podcasts with the Retirement Education Series.